Hey everybody, Tag, Life Done Free. Hey, today I thought I would put a quick video out. Over the weekend, I spent one of the days rebuilding my rainwater catchment system as far as the equipment that delivers it. In my house, you can use rainwater at any of the faucets, any of the toilets, the washing machine, anywhere you want, just simply by turning a valve. But when we moved out here, as I talk about a little bit in the video, I was in a hurry, so I kind of put it together rather quickly. But I spent this weekend putting it in more permanent, and I'd like to share that with you. You know, this rainwater system is very important to me. It gives me a second source of water beyond the well. You know, I have no utilities that come in here, and so having dual systems is super nice. So if you're interested in rainwater system, I will include the costs to put the whole thing in when we get to the end at current prices. I looked it up this morning. And anyway, I hope you like it, so let's check it out. Come on. Okay, so my project for today. This rainwater system, and if you look at it, it's in here pretty tight. And I did that because when everything happened to us and we had to move quick, I had no water. And so I just put in a quick system so that, we could wash our hands and use the bathroom and take a shower, etc., etc. So this is the rainwater catchment system. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to completely disassemble this system. And I'm actually going to put it in permanently. But I'm going to do it over here on this wall. And I've already kind of began to take some of the stuff apart. That silver pipes down there in the bottom, those are the water lines that are running in. And I just got them heat taped so that we could make it through the winter. But again, I'm going to disassemble all that. I'm going to take all this concrete board off this wall. I'm going to pull that window out and kind of strip this wall down and kind of start new. So when we're done, this will look just like a bench that's sitting in here. Everything will be hid underneath it. And I ought to be able to upgrade the system. So I guess I'll get busy. I'll film along the way. See ya. Okay, so I'm going to start dismantling this thing. I'm going to take that blue tank out of there. And if you look all the way down here in the bottom, there's a nut right here. So I'm going to take that out. That'll drop the tank out. And then I can start dismantling the system, taking the pumps out, taking the filters out, and getting it moved over. Okay, so I've completely emptied it. This space will be for a big stainless steel tank, and we'll use it to create hot water out of our Kitchen Queen wood cook stove. And this will give a secondary source of hot water. So now we're going to get onto this. We're going to get all this whole section all built and put together. And okay, so I have put that back wall in. Installed the rest of the outlets. I took that wall out originally so that I could add a switch underneath the sink, which is on the other side, because I was already here. I've dismantled the pipes coming in, cut them. Those cords are for just line heaters in case I want to turn them on. I put a piece of plywood on the ground. That's so that I can just give a little extra insulation on the bottom because it's sitting on a deck. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the pieces and parts in here and figure out where everything goes. And then from there, we'll put it together. Okay, so I have it completely disassembled, and now I'm going to work on putting it back together. So first I want to cover the intake side with you guys, where the water comes in. So this line right here, this is the water that comes in from that 3,000 gallon tank, which comes off my gutters, okay? So that line comes in, then what we're going to do is we're going to run it through a sediment filter. This is to take debris out before it hits the pump. From there, we're going to run it into the intake of the pump. This is just a half horsepower shallow well pump. We'll run it from there, then it'll come out this hole right here. Okay, it's going to run up and over and connect right down here to the bottom of this tank. Now on a pressure tank, it doesn't matter which side you come in on. It makes no difference. So once I get that all connected, that'll be the intake side. And then coming out of this pump here, I'll run up through the filters and then back into the house. But first things first, let's get the intake side done. Okay, so now I've got the intake side complete. So let me show you guys how it works. So this right here is your main line coming in. This is the line that's coming in from the tank. Okay, so all it does, it runs up here to the sediment filter. This sediment filter is available at Menards, which is where I purchased it. So really the reason why I put this sediment filter in is because I want it to take any debris that happens to end up in the tank out prior to hitting the pump, which will extend the life of the pump. Obviously, the next piece here is the shutoff valve. So I want to be able to isolate each piece of the system. So I put a shutoff valve before and after a lot of pieces so that if I ever have to replace something, I can simply just shut the valve off, go in and replace it, and that's all she wrote. These 2x4s that are back here, I know it's not the prettiest thing in the world, but really what it does for me is it keeps this sediment filter out away from the wall, allowing me to empty the jar, allowing me to get access to it. That electrical outlet right there, there's two of them out here. I have waterproof covers for them that I'll put on somewhere during this process. So we leave the valve, we turn down into the pump. So talk about this just a little bit. You could do this a lot of different ways. Like, for example, you could just come straight out of here with one and connect to your pipe and off you go. But I did this for several reasons. One, all of this is going to be in a cabinet. And so I'm going to be looking down at it. So I want to be able to hook up things like, see that gauge back there? So I can see what kind of pressure I'm getting. But the other thing, this bottom piece right here, I'm going to bring another water source in here at some point. And then this will act as a booster pump. So I'm going to bring in pond water at some point through this system. I don't have it done yet. The pond's not full. But I'm going to add that right here to this bottom cap. These two edge ones right here, you could do all kinds of things with these, you know, from gauges to just other sources. And so I like having options. I like building to make things expandable. Let's go to the pump. So a couple things real quick. So let me give you a little tip. This pump will work best the closer it is to the tank. So I'm about 6 feet away right now. If you try to put this, you know, 50 feet away, it's going to struggle. It's just not going to work correctly. So anyway, you got the intake coming into the pump. This is a 1/2 horsepower pump. Something really important, at least on my end, is this is a 115 volt pump. You really want to make sure that you understand what voltage you're buying, because they also make 220 or 240 volt pumps. This pump cost me about, if I remember right, about $300. Also available at Menards. So come up, again, another shutoff valve, right? Because again, I want to isolate the pump. I want to be able to replace it or move it if I want to. So then it comes down. This here is what's called a check valve. And so what these are really made for is so that you can only move water one way. So water will come through the check valve this way, but it won't go backwards. And so I don't want to be feeding pressure back the other way. So kind of just a safety mechanism. Come down here to the tank. So it's going to run in here to the pressure tank, feed the pressure tank, and then eventually going to come out this one right here. And this one here is going to go to the outtake side. So this is where we're going to install the filters, you know, those kind of things before I head back into the house. And that's what I'm going to get working on next. This right here is an overpressure valve. You need to put one of these in your system, because if it ever gets too much pressure, instead of blowing apart, it's just going to blow that valve and shoot water, you know, all over the floor. But it will protect the equipment. This here is just a simple on-off. This is in case I want to drain it, which I want to do when the winter time comes. And again, by buying these big manifolds like this, it allows me to put them in. This gauge here, I'm going to change today and turn it facing up. And I want to do that again because this is all going to be inside of a cabinet. I want to be able to just look down and see what kind of pressure I'm getting. Again, here's going to go to the filters. This here is a 52 gallon. Let me step back here. This here is a 52 gallon pressure tank, 1/2 horsepower pump, sediment filter. So this is the entire intake side. Okay, so where we left off here, as you can see, I turned the gauge around so I can see it coming up. So here's the outlet side. It's coming up, going up, shut off valve again so I can isolate it. Comes up to those two filters, and this top valve right here, this is so that you can turn it and bypass the filter. So then that works good for being able to clean out the filter. Again, just PEXed into another filter over here. This is a union. This allows me to disassemble the filter without having to rebuild the whole system. Into a UV filter, which will go down and then go down into the house. So from a plumbing perspective, the system is completely hooked up. All that's left to do now is I've got to get the wiring in for both the UV filter and for the pump. Get those covers on those two outlets, and Okay, so I got the system in. As I mentioned before, we were going to do some wiring. So let's look down here. So I wired me a plug into this pressure switch, and what this pressure switch is for is when the faucet comes on in the house or in the bathroom or in the laundry room or whatever it is, it will sense that pressure and it will turn this whole system on. So it's just basically wired up underneath and to this outlet cover right here. Would help me keep, some of the water out of it. I also wired another one over there covered, and what I'll use that one for is those cords round up right there, which is just heat tape to help keep pipes thawed in the colder months. So from here, the next process is I'm going to put a cabinet around all of this and try to take advantage of the space. But before I wrapped it up, I thought I'd just go over it one more time because this is really a pretty simple process that about anybody can do. So real quick here. Okay, so this line right here, this is the main water coming in. And so it comes up, it comes through a sediment filter. The sediment filter's here so that it catches any debris coming out of the tank before it hits the pump. I got a shut-off valve between everything. This just allows me to isolate. This pipe comes down, comes into the front of this pump. So as I mentioned before, you could have just done this with just an elbow or a straight, but I like having these ports because I'll tie stuff into them. This bottom port down here is where my pond's going to come in at. I'm going to bring a line into the house from the pond, through a bunch of filters, but ultimately into the house through the pond so that I have a third water source. So the water comes in here, comes into the pump, comes out here. Again, another shut-off valve. Again, this allows me to isolate, then come down all the way over here. This pipe runs down into this check valve. This stops water from going backwards. Down into this manifold. This right here is an overpressure valve, so if I ever get too much pressure, it will pop the pressure valve instead of breaking parts. As I mentioned, I was going to turn that gauge upside down because, again, I'm going to be reading this from the top. So I move the gauge. This is just a drain valve. Comes up here, runs through that first filter, through the second filter, through the UV filter, okay? Runs down, got another valve. Let me back up a minute. Okay, so see these little pieces right here and right here, these are unions. This will allow me to completely take this piece apart without having to rebuild the whole system. Anyway, so runs down, and then we'll feed to the house. So, again, not a super complicated process. As I mentioned before, I'm going to put a cabinet around this next or something. I've got to get a little creative here because I don't like the height very much, because it's going to make that cabinet pretty tall to put stuff on. Another thing I wanted to point out here before I go on is those two filters. I don't really like this system from the aspect of I'm dependent upon those filters. So I can store them up, which we do, but there's got to be a better system through charcoal or through something else that I can put in here that I can, create clean myself. But I'm working on that, and I built this so I could pull them out real easy and put something else in. So again, the next step is I'm going to build some kind of cabinet around this in order to hide it, and then also to keep it safe and also keep it dark because, as long as the water's dark, algae won't grow in between uses and things like that. So I'm going to get busy. Well, everybody, as I promised, so here's the cost breakdown of the Rainwater system. Now this covers from the tank to the end of the system. So I did not include the cost of the PEX that runs inside the house or any of those kind of things, just the system by itself. So if you look up here, we start with the pressure tank, then the shallow pump, the filters, all of those. I also included, this is the cost per unit, and then the number that I needed in the system. So most cases it would have been just one, but as you get down here and look at some of these fittings, I needed like 11 of these, for example. But anyway, grand total to put the entire system in was $2,229.31. And I know it's a lot of money, but to have the freedom of that extra source of water and be able to send it to anywhere I want to in my house was far worth it to me. So I hope you found this useful. Well, I hope you enjoyed my presentation on the Rainwater system. I hope it helps you, get out there and put one together. And if I can help in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, as I am super happy to help. Well, it's time for me to go. I got lots of stuff to do. I'm going to do a little work on the turkey coop. So until then, I'm Tag. This is Life Done Free, and hold the line. Don't give an inch. See ya.